Hello everyone, this is the East Coast Economic Update for September the 28th, 2012. Now a couple of things I want to point out to you that unfortunately because of the internet and all this other crazy stuff, I'm just going to let you Google it. A couple of issues. We were talking about, or I was talking about when I was upstate, the fact that banks won't give mortgages. Now, an interesting thing to note that 2 days after I made that statement back on, I think, the 19th, Bank of America, which now is settling a lawsuit, stated two things. One, they were going to let go 30,000 people of their employees. So this downward spiral of unemployment is really a downward spiral of people who are unemployed. In other words, even though the number, the 8.5 or 8.1 or whatever the heck they call it now, is getting smaller and smaller, it doesn't mean that people aren't unemployed or aren't employed. What it means is that they're not getting the benefits. But it's interesting to note, going back to what I had said on the 19th, that that Bank of America is going to let go 30,000 people by the end of October, mid-October. Brings me back to that October 15th issue. And also that they have said in open discussions with Bloomberg and a lot of, I believe the Wall Street Journal as well, but I heard it on Bloomberg, that they will not give loans to people that do not have substantial accounts in their banks. Now, this in and of itself is amazing considering that the TARP program and the bailout that was given out 4 years earlier required all major banks to loosen loan restrictions. Now, I'm not for loan restrictions, and I am not for loosening loan restrictions. That's how we got ourselves in this situation before. But it is interesting to note that even though everybody is saying, you know, it's really easy to get a loan, it's the lowest it's been in history, the truth is that banks, even though have taken our money and taken more than just the $980 billion or 7/8 of $1 trillion that we openly gave them, but they've taken over $27 trillion to stopgap a $600 trillion or maybe even a 1.4 quadrillion, if you can wrap that number around your head, debt problem that's going on here and around the world. And if the main issue here is banks have set up, and I mentioned this a while ago before, that banks have set up living wills. So they're backing themselves out. At the same time, countries like the EU, particularly if you've seen the Spain issue and Greece, even though these countries are relatively poorer than, say, Germany or France, all of the EU bloc countries are continuing to reevaluate their benefits to the people that are in need of them so they can pay down or pay more of the interest, not necessarily pay down the debt, but pay more of the interest that was set up by the banks some 10 years prior. So there is a quintessential basic problem here. Now, as we get closer to October the 15th, we're going to find that there's going to be more and more pushback, if there's already pushback in Europe, and with the fact that China is now in a doldrum, probably in its first recession, that will come to reality for all of us during the holiday season, during the Christmas into New Year season, and also the bonus season for the banks. Notice that the banks are laying off people just as they're entering their last quarter, which is around the 15th of October, once again, to not only prevent people from getting bonuses or getting paid, but also allowing them to come, the board directors to come above board as far as lack of losses so that they can get their bonuses. So there's obviously a greed element going on here. One other thing, and this is very sensitive to me, being Jewish, of course, but I find it very disturbing that Israel is pressing to attack Iran. My biggest fear is something that the guys at the Webbot group a couple of years ago said, that there would be the Israeli mistake. One of the biggest mistakes that I think could happen, and I'm laying out the scenarios and I'm hoping none of these occur, is that if Israel decides to attack Iran, and it is found out by the IAEA, and we've done this with the WMDs when we went into Iraq, that Iran's nuclear program is strictly for energy purposes and not for bomb making, we're going to find a great pressure on the Israeli state and on the United States to give some type of retribution. My fear is that the relationship that we have had, that Israel has had and that Jews have had with America, will be put to its tightest point, to its breaking point, if such a thing occurs. Now, I have to be honest with you. I know that Bibi Netanyahu said in 1993 that Iran was only 6 to 9 months from building a bomb, and 20 years later he's saying the same thing. That's a long 6 to 9 months. My concern is that too many people on the evangelical Christian right are hoping for an apocalyptic Armageddon, and on the Jewish right, on the extreme Orthodox right, which I am a representative of, not necessarily agreement to it, wish for a messianic age that is very similar. I think both are dangerous. I think both will, if it's taken to its fullest conclusion, will cause a process that neither evangelicals nor Orthodox Jews want or desire. And it will come with a price, politically, socially, and it will give the situation in the hands of the Middle East to allow them to do what they had tried to do in 1967. This disturbs me. The United States of America as a country is waning as a superpower, and at the same time, it's also interesting to note, and I'm just throwing this out, it's more of a rant than an economic update, but it is all connected. It's interesting to note that in the last 24 months, 36 to 24 months, we at the United States have started everything from Arab Springs to invasions of countries that had nothing to do with 9/11, and we're ticking around Israel and all the areas where, such as Egypt, Libya, Syria, and parts of I was going to say Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is more or less suppressing the system, and I'll be honest with you, I think the United States is helping it out. It's interesting to note that we're de-evolving these countries to prevent what may happen if Bibi Netanyahu gets his way. I pray that it doesn't. But these are all culminating around the same time. I know that probably by the time the EU does start to formally collapse, the United States will be faced with its own demons, because we started it, came around, we threw money at it, it's come around again, we're out of money, and we're out of confidence games, and this is it. I feel bad for whomever becomes president of the United States. And I am deeply concerned, economically speaking, for the long haul, because it will take, and probably until 2025, and that's without an incident with Iran and Israel. It will take at least until 2025 for us to right ourselves as a country and right ourselves as an economy. And until that time, we are going to see further and further situations. And unfortunately, we will start to see the same austerity measures that the EU has laid upon its own members that we will get from our federal government and from the individual state governments, because they'll be defunded. So be aware of this. The time of panicking is long gone, but primarily we must be aware that the banks are getting ready to evaporate and run to the Cayman Islands or wherever else they can hide, and it will be left to us as individual people, as educated people, as resourceful people, to pull ourselves out and hope that we will set up a system that will correct what we've done. It won't stop it, because history has shown that we get to a point where we become very wealthy and all this stuff happens, and now we're on the end of that. So it is up to you as individuals to get involved in your communities or start to create communities and prepare for what will happen. And I may make another video later on to talk about that in more detail, more philosophical than analytical in this regard. But watch the banks closely, particularly HSBC, Bank of America, and Capital One. Watch those guys in Allied, because that's GMAC. Those guys are going to start to dissipate. Watch closely. It's going to happen. And when that happens, when they start to dissipate or leave the country, like HSBC is planning to do slowly and quietly, that's when you know that the austerity measures are going to come to a street near you. So until next time, folks, peace.